I've always found racket technology and tennis for the ages so interesting, so today I will be giving a total analysis of how the game developed and let's get into it. Tennis has changed so much, and I'll just be giving a rundown, actually starting the 1500s till modern day tennis. And first I'll just be showing you basically how Rod Laver played in the 60s, which is the start of the open era of tennis. He was mainly following a strategy of just serve volley, but not really always serve volley, more just hit the ball as hard as I can flat and slowly make it forward. This is the type of racket he would play with. A bit hard to generate spin on, but Rod Laver was actually the inventor of backspin. You'll see a lot of these big players invented game styles. Now, basically, you'd have the slightly bigger racket, a bit longer, which allowed for a bit more topspin, just a little bit, and more accuracy, this is beyond board. It would still do a lot of serve volley. This is the 70s and early 80s of the new rackets, but he would also have way better defense with these new rackets. He was actually the guy who invented topspin and the double-handed backhand. Now then, in the late 80s and the early 90s, we had the invention of metal racket. Not only in the 90s, it wasn't invented in the 90s, but this is a racket from the 90s. Basically, the top player of that 80s to early 90s was Ivan Lendl, which he was super talented. He had great shots from the baseline and slowly just moved forward during the point. Similar to Rod Laver, just better. But then we had Sampras, who would just serve volley, perfect precision. But the thing is, mainly over all this time, strings would be made out of cow gut, which is a lot more power but not that much topspin. But then with synthetic strings invented in the late 90s, you'd have way more control and also be able to generate a bit more topspin. And that would mean in the early 2000s, you'd have someone like Roger Federer, who's an all-courter and would be able to do anything with the ball overall just with these rackets, and racket technology would just advance, but also players would advance. Then in the 2010s, you'd have even more topspin on the racket, more control, slightly less power, which kind of led to Roger Federer as a bit of a downfall, but he still played great, which gave Rafael Nadal, who was just heavy topspin, just get the ball in no matter what was his main strategy. But they would also allow for players like Novak Djokovic, who are something in between Nadal and Federer, which would 90% of the time stay at the baseline, but every now and then would still come at the net and hit some winners, and that would still be allowed. Now I'm going to head over to the court to test some of these out. Okay guys, I'm just going to quickly head over to a tennis court, just test some rackets for the ages, give you guys a total analysis. Let's go.
Court now. First I'm going to try this one. It's the 1960s racket. So what's the most interesting thing is these cross strings here. I think they're supposed to keep the strings tight, and they are quite tight, but they're a bit more, I feel like they're strung at like 30, maybe 25 pound there. Still maybe a bit tighter than some of the pros, but most of the pros would have tighter rackets. Also it means it has less control and more power, which was a bit more important with the big serve and then the volley. We'll see if I see anything else, and let's go and try and see how it feels. First I'm going to try and hit it flat. So works. Now I'm going to try and hit top spin. I think what's going to happen is I'm not going to be able to generate that much. I'm going to use an Eastern grip like I usually do, which probably isn't the smartest, but we're just going to try it. Okay, it does work. Now I'm going to try the backhand a little bit. It just doesn't give quite as much spin, but it's a bit more than I thought. I feel like it's almost easier to generate power, and it's quite accurate. I think it's just as long as you can hit it on the right spot, it's fine, but I don't really understand what's the point of the long handle. I feel like you can stretch further, but also like if they give you a volley to the body, you'll struggle like this. Maybe if I go like this, it's a bit hard because I got it like here instead of at the right spot. And I'm going to try and serve. I think it's the hardest part, because it's going to be hard to brush it, because usually with the serve you only hit it with a very small part of the racket. It works. It didn't kick much, it didn't have much spin at all on that one, much less than forehand. You can see it definitely being better at volleying. Let's see here. Gives you a lot of control on the volley just because it kind of kicks it, it kind of just hits it. You don't really have to project it as much. It'll kind of just go anyway, because it's a bit more like a net almost. So yeah, that's the 1990s racket. The difference is obviously metal. It's not exactly the same, and the main difference between this and new rackets is the strings. Strings are still hit just as flat as the other racket. I thought the strings are a bit tighter, meaning it'll probably have more control. But yes, its grip is absolutely going off, as you can see here. It doesn't have the cross strings as well. So I'm going to see, I think the top spin is going to be a bit hard, but it's definitely closer. It's a very heavy racket, which, as I explained with how Quirton used it, I think what Quirton did, I think the difference is, because I use semi-Eastern grip, Eastern grip, and most of the top players either use that or Western grip, which is this. Semi-Western grip is what I think Quirton used, which is topspin. It's a lot of topspin for that time, but it wouldn't be as much now. So let's test it out. So let's just see the topspin. It's definitely more, but still not quite as much as the newer rackets, I think. I feel like it is a bit less control because you kind of have to direct the ball a bit more. I didn't try backspin on the last one. I probably should have. Let's see here. That you didn't see that. You didn't see that. You didn't see that. Didn't see that. You didn't. So now we're gonna try the backhand. You can still generate good topspin, I'd say. How good are the flat shots on this? I'd say the flat shots are a bit worse. The volleys are obviously going to be the best though, because that's the main thing about the 90s. It kind of went back to the serve and volley in the early 90s or the late 90s. I like this. This is great. Because of the heavier racket, you don't want to move it that much, but you don't have to, so you don't want to move it as much, so you can kind of just put it there and it'll do it for you. I'm going to serve now. I'm just going to do one serve, quite a kicky serve, because last one just didn't kick. It just went on the floor. I think this one will do a bit more spin, which you guys can maybe see then. It bounced a bit higher, but it still really slid on the floor. I don't think you guys could see it bounced. First one bounced about this high on a serve that would usually bounce this high. Second one bounced this high out of this high usually. Yeah, they're definitely much lower, but you can see they're definitely making progress. I think racket from the 1980s, which is not one I have. This is a 2000 racket. It's almost 2010, but it is a 2000 racket. The biggest difference that I see is obviously the weight. It's about half the weight. It's 250 grams. Probably still the lightest rackets that are out there then. Now you get rackets that are 150 to 200, but much lighter. I think these strings were quite tight, so they weren't actually like this. These are a bit less tight. These are minor topspin strings. They are built to give topspin. This is the type of racket like Federer played with and Nadal played with. Guys, sorry, just cut off there. Basically what I said is Nadal played with Bobby Lutt, which had a bit more string spin, and this racket grip is not great, kind of broken as well. So these strings also, I think I said it used to be more spinny, so we'll try it out, but there would be a bit more spin. I'm sure there's already more spin. I'd say it's about the same spin as the previous racket, with obviously much more flat strings, and there were definitely more spinny strings available at the time, so you can really see that evolution. But it also has much more power and control, just because the racket head, obviously the racket head is better every single time. Obviously from the wood racket to that racket it's better, but I think it even gets better with this one, and this one's obviously much lighter. Oh yeah, the flat it's not as good flat. I feel like it almost doesn't really allow me to hit flat, and it almost shanks it into doing like a top spin, which isn't great. It's still okay. You can definitely slice better with this one too. But even the earlier rackets had good slice too, because I remember the first person to do backspin was actually Rod Laver. But the first person to do topspin was Bjorn Borg in the 80s and early 80s and late 70s, much later. So basically, that's all I really saw. This is not a complicated racket, similar to the modern rackets, but we'll definitely see the difference here in a second. I'm going to do a kick serve and I'll just tell you how it went. I think that this one's going to bounce way higher than the other ones. It still bounced lower than what I would usually see. That's mainly because of the strings. I can feel the much more compact, much more control with it. I almost hit my target perfectly. The other ones, it was very far off. The one I almost hit the baseline, which is also human error, but I think it's mainly the racket. It did bounce a bit higher. The first one bounced like here. Second one bounced like here. This one was a bit higher, like here, out of what I would usually expect there with most rackets. So this is a 2010s racket. Basically, it's a bit heavier, but this is the heaviest racket made in the 2010s. Pro Staff, which is the racket Roger Federer played with. After this, we're just going to have the new racket and then a surprise racket I have for you guys. So basically, the strings are definitely tighter. I can feel definitely top spinny strings, much also a bit rougher, I'd say, and the frame feels much greater in the swing through, and the grip is also much better, which is weird. I put an over grip on, but the actual grip's also good. It's much more logos, much more information. If you can see here, the weight here and everything there, much easier to see. Usually they'd be inside here, but these are in there, and they also have the logo on the side, which they wouldn't usually have as big back in the day. That's obviously not an actual racket difference, just like a branding difference. So let's see how it is. I think it's going to have much more top spin. It does have a bit of damage here, a bit of a crack, but I don't think it'll do a major difference. It definitely feels way better. I don't know, it definitely feels like a bit more spin than the previous one, but once again, not a big difference since we had the wooden racket. But it definitely feels much nicer to swing, much more controlled, much more power overall. Let's try the serve real quick. Going to do another kick serve. This is probably the biggest difference I've had since the wood racket to the 90s racket. Biggest spin difference, I think, on the forehand. Still not that good though. Wait, you didn't see that? I didn't miss the serve. That was on purpose. I definitely did that on purpose to make the video more interesting. I'm not bad. Way higher. So we had the first one about here, then there, then there. This one was about here. This is where most modern rackets, I'd say, is. This one was about there. This racket wasn't really made for spin. Quite a spinny racket, but definitely less than average because it was made for Roger Federer, who has a semi-western grip, which is about here. I have here, which is way more spinny if you use it. Roger Federer's stroke would be there instead of there, which means it doesn't really need that much spin.
So you might be thinking, why is this idiot playing with a frying pan on a tennis court? Well, I'm not, although I might be a little bit of an idiot, I'm not that much of an idiot. Because in the early 2000s, Andy Roddick played a match against a college player, a really good player that will absolutely destroy me with a frying pan. And he beat him somehow. I don't know that the pros are just that good. So we just thought we tested for fun. Why not?
Now that you know that, let's just try this. It's very heavy. Barely more heavy than the 90s racket, which is concerning, but the 90s player's health. This is not ideal. You can't really generate any spin on it. I don't know if it's important to give commentary on this. That ball was not important. That ball was irrelevant. So you can't generate spin at it even a little bit because, it doesn't have strings. It's just like if you hit a ball with one string, probably wouldn't have that much spin unless you hit it very wrong. And then it will go out. So now we're going to do the serve. I think this is probably going to be the easiest part. I'm not going to try and kick it because that would be horrible. I'm just going to try and It didn't go out of the entire court, so we'll take that. And now for the ultimate round. We've already named pretty big names, like Roger Federer played the Pro Staff only how many years ago? 8 years ago. I was 5 then, so I don't know why I'm playing that like that wasn't a long time ago. This racket being played with by Stefanos Tsitsipas, which just won the latest Master. He's doing great, playing very good tennis right now. And this is the racket he's using currently. Just came out a few weeks ago. It's a new Wilson blade. I know I have a lot of Wilson rackets, but yeah, they were just going to be testing this out. This is the racket I'm going to currently be playing with. Super excited about that. One of the most expensive rackets we've seen since the Pro Staff, which are about the same price. The most expensive racket this decade so far. It's not a custom racket. I'm sure there's more expensive custom rackets, but let's try it out. I'm going to stand a bit far back here. Hey guys, besides the wood to metal, this is probably the biggest difference I've had. Just precision, power and all of that. We can try it flat. I think it'll be better than the previous racket actually, just because, no, it will not. I think it's because it's too compact. You don't get time on the racket as much, and the stringing recommendation is actually the same as 2000s and the 2010s racket. But this is a less spin racket compared to the head, which is usually a more spin racket, which the 2000s racket was. I'm going to do the serves. I need to get a ball.
Sorry guys, I'm just here editing video. I did serve with the racket. It actually bounced about the same as the other one. But I hope you guys learned something with this video. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. To see more analyses of tennis rackets, maybe what you need to use as your tennis racket. Hope you guys have a great day. Bye.